Between my brother and I dare say my comrade, the executive secretary, for you to understand that you have to go back many, many years to our academic backgrounds and the kinds of professors we met and the intellectual foundations. And that has made it very easy for us to understand the work we're supposed to be doing. That basic education is the basic foundation of growth, of development, of peace, of stability, of progress. And while we will not blame the present administration for the woes of basic education, governments over the decades have toyed with it, and today we are reaping the consequences. It is sounds a bit morbid to say thanks to COVID-19. Some state governments, local governments, and even to some extent the federal government still have been pretending that whenever UBEC says they needed more money, they were just being noisy. But COVID-19 exposed the underbelly of the educational system and gave justification to the fact that there is an urgent need to put in more resources, more stronger additional management, monitoring, infrastructural development. Because in 2020, going to 21, and this is my last comment, it will be criminal to have a primary school without water, without toilets, without chairs for children to sit. When on the streets of Abuja you cannot count the Mercedes-Benz and the Jeeps and the Lexus, you get to the airports in Lagos and Abuja, you can't count the private planes. Who should be ashamed there? The poor kids, their parents, or the Nigerian elite and the Nigerian governments? So I want to thank you for all that you've been doing. And I know you can do more, and you will do more if the right tools are provided. We don't expect you to use your salaries to construct toilets for school children. And though, even with this current NSAS, everybody is talking about the federal government, the governors and local government chairmen are very happy. If the looting had not taken place, nobody will be talking about the governors. Everything is federal. But the states are there, they have responsibilities under the Constitution. And this question of basic education is a collective responsibility of all levels of government. So as we come here to do this oversight, there is need for us always to remember in our respective ways that the other levels of government equally have responsibilities in this regard. So we are here just to fulfill our constitutional duties. That requires us to look at how appropriated funds have been expended, if there have been variations, look at the procurement process, at the workflow, and see if there are challenges that we should know about that should inform our deliberations as we look at the 2021 budget appropriations.
The 2020 budget implementation report is before us. As the chairman mentioned, it has been a very difficult year. Difficult in the sense that by the time COVID hit, almost one of the worst affected sectors had been the education sector. We didn't know that every day we were sending about 42 to 45 million children to school every morning. And by midday in mid-March, everybody was told to pack and go back home with a lot of panic about what was going on at that time. So school activities just closed, activities of agencies closed. And even after other agencies have started working, there wasn't much UBEC could do. Up to now, there is a problem because schools have not fully reopened. So our report this, it starts with the usual vision and mission of UBEC from page 1. The target of UBE, these are things that had always been available to members, so I don't need to do them, Page 4, the funding formula so far in terms of, on page 5, in terms of matching grant to states, constituting 50% of the amount, educational imbalance 14, good performance 5%, physically and mentally challenged, UB implementation and monitoring 2% each, instructional materials 15%, and teacher professional development 10%, making the 100%, isn't it, that UBEC is given. And of course, we have also given out the conditions usually for accessing the UBE funds, particularly the matching grants, where states are required to provide counterpart funding of 50%. That had been a bone of contention in many cases where, isn't it, states had been arguing that they never had the money to pay that, isn't it? But fortunately, I think the system has been very adamant, because even during the pandemic, the Governors Forum wrote to the President asking for him to use his executive powers, is it through that order that is usually given, where he could waive the 50% in the matching grant, but I think the Attorney General told him, no, this is in the law, unless, the National Assembly itself, isn't it, will sit down and say, no, that 50% is no longer there, isn't it, the President should not do that. And I think that's how that particular issue, isn't it, was put into abeyance. And the conditions under that are there in terms of the funding arrangement that is there. The 2020 appropriation, the sum of 111,789,185,895 being 2% of the consolidated revenue fund was initially allocated to the Commission under the 2020 Appropriation Act as statutory transfer, in line with Section 11, subsection 1 of the UBE Act of 2004. However, the budget was reviewed downwards to 52,915,486,001.00 under the Appropriation, Repeal and Enactment Act 2020, represent a reduction of 52.66% of the total amount. The table below shows the summary of appropriation by component for the year 2020, where the matching grant to states of 50% is now 26 billion, educational imbalance fund of 14%, 7.408, 108,044.14, special education fund, again 1,058,309,720.02, good performance 5%, with 2,645,774,300.05, teacher professional development 5,291,548,600.01, UBEC implementation of 2%. Now moving down to 1.058309,720.02, as well as UB monitoring program fund of the same amount, that's the 2%, giving a total, the 100% total being 52,915,486,001 naira. Now the statutory releases. It's interesting, by the time that budget was reviewed, we had gotten almost all the money that was supposed to be due to us by the amended budget. By the amended budget. And the sum of 55 billion, because now it was based on the original 111 billion. So the transfers were very consistent, coming but stopping by the middle of the year. And that's how, isn't it, by that time, 55,894,592,947.50 was released to the Commission, being January to June 2020 statutory release. That's for 6 months, based on the initial appropriated figure of 111,789,185,895 naira, representing 50% releases as at 30th June 2020, before the budget was revised to 52,915,486.001 kobo, just resulting to an over-release of 2,979,106,946.50 only. Details of these releases, component by component, are in appendix, isn't it? 1. For those who want to look at those particular details. It should be noted the current year's budget, and I think every year when we come, we tell people that we tell members, honorable members, the chairman, that states start accessing monies when the total collection is there, not before. So subsequently, you find that the monies of 2019 are the ones that are accessed in 2020 by states, while those of 2020 are the ones that are accessed in 2021. As had been, but there has been a lot of effort, actually, isn't it, at least between January and March, for a lot of the states now to begin making moves, isn't it, to pay the counterpart funding required and to access, isn't it, those monies that are there. The sum of 29,751,242,914.90 was appropriated by the National Assembly as the capital expenditure for the Commission as follows. The Federal Teacher Scheme is 1,325,207,625. Constituency projects, ZIP, 2,806,000,000 naira. Constituency projects capital is 25,620,035,290 naira. The total being 29,751,242,914.90. The releases, the sum of 18,739,607,056.15 was released to the Commission as at 30th September 2020, representing 63%, as follows. And I think this is in Appendix 8. The Federal Teacher Scheme, the releases were 700 million. And while, just to give the breakdown here, isn't it? Constituency projects 2 billion, and then constituency projects capital was 15, isn't it? 935, 107,056.15. Making a total of 18,739,607,056.15. Utilization was 13,530,800 was utilized for technical evaluation of constituency projects. Zonal intervention and capital projects, out of the 29 appropriated for the zonal intervention, the ZIP and capital combined, the sum of 18, as I've already mentioned, was released as at 30th September 2020. Contracts worth 15 billion, 634, 632, 180.5 were awarded for the 2020 ZIP and constituency projects. Again, we should see the appendix, isn't it, in 14, Appendix 14. And, it's important to say that most of the letters had been either have been disbursed or has been disbursed for the constituency projects, and as well as the ZIP projects. We have some challenges, that we needed, again, some discourse as far as, the various committees are concerned. And that's where you have construction, new construction. And petitions have been inundating us. Where, for example, if in the budget the law is construction of 3 blocks, a block of 3 classrooms, but the amount released could not do that. So members prioritize and say, okay, can you either build smaller or can you renovate based on those amounts released? Thereafter, somebody will look at the law and will petition that that member was shortchanging his own constituency by not doing the new construction, but by renovation. So they drag us also to ICPC. They drag us to EFCC. And the issue here, isn't it, is a situation whereby we have been accused of environment.
The way you have analyzed the ups and downs of the budgetary allocation processes, the deductions, and so on, definitely tells us that there is still a lot of work to be done in the area of basic education. I believe also that with the quantum of work that you need to cover, I had anticipated that UBEC will be exempted from those so-called budgetary deductions. This is an agency that is concerned with our children. Many of them completely helpless at the mercy of their parents, community, government projects, and so on. I think it's a lesson that we will take note of and going into the future. But for me, I definitely believe that there are areas, where such deductions like basic education, health, security, but the most important of all, as far as I'm concerned, is basic education. Health is equally critical. But again, government policy, we can only do our best to try to highlight what we think.
I have looked at the things that you've done. They are based on policies, based on how they have been structured to work. And we have agreed, even before now, that one of the greatest areas of challenge that we require to adjust and solve is the technical and vocational education. Under which of the subheads do you have funds dedicated for that purpose? And if you don't have, is it going to be an administrative process to create such, or it will require legislative input to get that done? Because like you mentioned, educational imbalance, you have a couple of percentage for that. You have for this special education, for teachers training and all of it. Do you have a dedicated subhead in that regard for technical and vocational education? Because if we want to reduce the frictions and stop the possibility of another end whatever, I think we need to focus on the vocational and technical education so that more of the hands-on.
Deduction of 20 billion naira was made when the budget was reviewed. That one is constitutional because it was done by the National Assembly. But the question of that, this 20 billion naira taken away by the direction of the directives of the Honorable Minister, maybe, so Mr. President, I don't know. This 20 billion naira, anything spending, I think, supposed to be approved or done by the National Assembly. Is there any constitutional backing for the minister to take away 20 billion naira from this ministry, from basic education, from UBEC, and use it for COVID-19?
without the authority or the approval of the National Assembly, because any money belongs to the nation, can only be spent after the approval of the National Assembly. I don't know whether that procedure has been followed. If not, the question goes to you and to the chairman and to my colleagues. Then
I'm selling a project here, and I know the kind of quality work that was done at last year, and I do hope that the DEX officers will maintain that quality, because that is only when we can be sure that little that is budgeted can stand the test of time. In terms of years that will be, the society will have to utilize it. Then most of the questions that I wanted to this thing were raised by other members.
It is very surprising and embarrassing to hear that you have shortfall in salary. And my friend here asked a very fundamental question, whether you are in IPPIS. Because ordinarily when you are doing budget, the first thing to be considered is salary of the workers. Now, if you are passing budget and after a lot of problems, you brought it back to the House under the leadership of the chairman, and you are talking of shortfall in salary, it means you are not operating the salary, the budget passed by the House. Because nobody will give you budget without considering the salary of the staff first. Other things might be stepped down.
As institutions, then we are not ready to make progress as a people. And the myriads of challenges we have will continue to compound, and that might snowball into what we are seeing now happening in Nigeria. Executive Secretary, from the summary of your discussion and your presentation, UBEC was run without a budget for 2020. Because, for instance, let me make an instance. Your appropriation for implementation fund of 2% and the monitoring fund for 2% amounted to about 2.2 billion. But as of September, you have spent 3.7 billion on your page 7. It's recorded there. That shows clearly that the Appropriation Act was breached. And that is our document. And there is no way I will sit here and support a law I made, you breach it, and I clap for you.
To the US during his presentation. Since my own final points will be on general comments on the future of basic education. You've already raised issues of the nominal role of the budgeting process is the allocations to some of the activities that have been left out or were not properly covered. I think we'll let the ES respond because he has a lot on his plate, and then we can follow up with the second round if any. Okay, I will use the floor.